Me da mucho gusto saludarlos a todos los que nos siguen en San Pedro o en cualquier otro municipio de nuestro país o del mundo. Este es un espacio en donde lo que buscamos es conocer la experiencia de otros alcaldes y servidores públicos municipales sobre aquello que ha funcionado bien en otros lados de México o del mundo para mejorar la calidad de vida de los ciudadanos. A mí me gusta ver a San Pedro, el municipio que me toca gobernar, como un municipio que siempre está aprendiendo y que reconoce que hay prácticas en otros lados que vale la pena conocer, entender bien para después implementar en San Pedro. Entonces, me da mucho gusto. I'm very happy today to have the great opportunity to talk with Mayor Leirion Gaylor. She is from Lincoln, Nebraska. She has held that position as a mayor since 2019. And among different topics, Mayor Bear has been recognized as a mayor particularly successful in dealing with the COVID-19 crisis, particularly in what has to do with economic recovery. The pandemic is not only a problem from a health perspective, a social perspective, an education perspective, but very importantly from an economic perspective. And I want to learn from Mayor Bear what have been those actions that have been more successful in Lincoln to deal with this crisis and to help the economy to recover from the very local level. Thank you, Mayor, for this opportunity to talk to you and to learn from what you have been doing in Lincoln.
Well, thank you, Mayor Trevino. It's so lovely to be with you and your community on your podcast.
Thank you. So what can you tell us about those actions that you have taken in Lincoln to help the community, particularly those involved in businesses, in local businesses, to deal with the economic crisis and all the limitations that we have been facing from COVID? What can we learn from your actions in Lincoln?
Well, thank you for the question. We're really proud of our community here in Lincoln, Nebraska, because we have so many people who came together, even though we couldn't be together physically, who came together remotely to strategize about how to take care of each other, how to protect people and our businesses in what became, of course, the biggest crisis that any of us had faced in our lifetimes. And early in the days of the pandemic, as we convened business leaders and community members and health officials, what we all acknowledged, and what was really important to acknowledge, is that the connection between public health and economic recovery is intertwined, that you couldn't have economic recovery without better public health outcomes. Because as you know, businesses need to be able to keep their workers and their customers safe. And that's important just in itself, but it's also important to make sure that consumers feel confident going to restaurants, feel confident going shopping, feel confident moving around in our community. So early on, we were emphasizing the connection between having really good public health practices and our business's success. And in those early days, our health teams spent a lot of time consulting and working with local businesses on how to keep their customers and employees safe with measures like distancing and sanitization and other masking, other techniques that we had available to us in the early days of the pandemic. And so people in Lincoln took those priorities seriously, and they took action, which was great. The other thing was that we, of course, convened a local economic recovery task force. And so we brought together, out of my office, we convened the Mayor's Economic Recovery Task Force, made up of folks from all across our community, businesses large and small, people who had special insight into the different challenges that businesses were facing. And that recovery task force mapped out strategies for us to consider to protect businesses and to protect our local economy. So we've had that roadmap in place for a very long time. And throughout the pandemic, we've been implementing the steps that we were able to implement. And that's included things like launching a buy local campaign in partnership with the private sector. We've encouraged all of our community members to shop local. We've made policies at our city government level to make purchasing local by the city more easy. And we've also made it easier for businesses to learn how to contract with the city. We've convened groups of business leaders together so they could give business to business advice and support, or B2B strategy sessions. And we've also made it easier for outdoor dining. Now, I know that's a lot easier for you year round in Mexico, but we have, of course, worked with our businesses to utilize the outdoor spaces that normally weren't being utilized for that purpose to help them continue to serve larger numbers of people, to continue to try to be accessible for those who have less confidence to go indoors. So many different steps like that have helped. And just this week and in the recent weeks, we've been rolling out American Rescue Plan dollars to help support businesses and workers as we navigate this pandemic.
And are employment levels close, at least to pre-pandemic numbers, or how far are you from that situation?
You know, what we're seeing is really a tale of two cities. We see that most of our median wage earners and higher wage earners are back at employment levels that were, mirror pre-pandemic levels. But for low wage workers, many of whom lost hours or lost their jobs during the pandemic, during the early stages of the pandemic, those folks haven't fully recovered and bounced back. So what we are doing is taking a real targeted approach with our relief dollars. We're trying to make sure that we're reaching workforce individuals who may need to make a pivot, who may need to change their skill set and be eligible for other kinds of work. And so we are right now, just this week, we launched, we have $12 million in funding available that we are putting out for proposals from educational institutions, from public-private partnerships, and other folks who have ideas about how to get job skills training for individuals who need to make that pivot in order to get back to full employment and to create economic opportunity and help grow our city.
Well, congratulations, Mayor, for helping people maintain or recover their jobs. And moving to another issue in which you have also been very brave, it is a challenge that we are facing, and maybe it's going to be a bigger challenge than the pandemic, and it's going to be with us for a longer time. And we as mayors have to face it from the city perspective, is global warming. And it's something, it's a big challenge everywhere. And small, medium, and large towns, we have to do something about it. Some of us are in our early steps, and it's urgent that we learn from each other. It's urgent that mayors from everywhere in the world are looking everywhere to find good practices. So what can you tell us, Mayor, from policies that seem to be working towards lowering gas emissions, or any policy that can help to prevent a growing impact on our environment?
Well, thank you for acknowledging how important this issue is in addressing and mitigating climate change. And thank you for your leadership locally. I know you've done a lot with mobility choices and with planting trees and doing your part. And I'm so grateful, because I think what we realize in the lessons from the pandemic that we can take away and apply to other things like climate change is that we live in an interconnected world, and what we do in one part of the globe affects and has an impact on our quality of life elsewhere on the globe. So what you do helps me, and what we do here in Lincoln can help you. So I appreciate that connection. Locally in Lincoln, we spent in the initial days of my administration, energy focused on developing a climate action plan for our local community. And that is something that we just got adopted in the past year. It is full of strategies for how we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. It sets a target for the year 2050 of reducing net greenhouse gas emissions by 80%. And it invites everyone to play a role. It's a climate action plan for our entire community. And of course, here at the City of Lincoln, we are trying to lead by example. And we've been looking at ways to green our fleet as one example. We have a lot of vehicles that we utilize at the city, and we are working towards having a more sustainable, energy efficient fleet. And we also have—
Is this fleet like for utilities or police or which kind of services?
Yeah, all of the above. We have a number of hybrid vehicles for our police that we've been piloting to see if they perform as well, so that we can transition our police car squads into to hybrid or electric vehicles. And we have been lucky enough to receive some federal funding from the Department of Transportation to help buy electric buses for public transit.
Okay.
And also CNG, we use compressed natural gas as well. And one of the things that we're really excited about, that we really just completed a very long-term project getting it off the ground, is converting our biogas that we take from our wastewater treatment plant, as cities take care of wastewater. We've been converting that biogas into fuel, and we're actually selling it on the market, working with private partners. And that is a real opportunity for us to, create renewable energy, to help support our goals, our climate action goals. And it's also a win-win. It's a new source of cleaner fuel. And we think this investment will pay off within a handful of years. We'll be actually in a profit-making mode with this particular biogas initiative. So it's a cost-effective, self-sustaining program that is good for the environment and creates an energy source for others. So we're really pleased about that initiative.
Yeah, well, here in San Pedro, one characteristic that is not to feel proud about, we have more cars than people in San Pedro. It's the only municipality in Mexico, and I have heard from experts that there are some other few cities in the world that has this characteristic, which is really a problem, because it talks not only about the abundance of automobiles, but also a cultural factor. So from this position, we have an urgency not only to make innovations as those you talk about using electric vehicles, which is important and which we will be pushing forward, but also in the line of promoting a cultural change within the community towards active mobility, walking some distance that are easy to walk. I mean, you sweat, but there is no problem. You sweat, you get dry. We have to get used to that kind of life, using the bicycle. So do you have something to tell us about the cultural change that is needed to be better citizens, more responsible, and to make a more sustainable city?
I think you're really onto something there. I think one of the hardest parts about kind of taking action on climate is that it does involve taking new steps, and change can be difficult. It can be at times perceived as less convenient or somehow less accessible. But again, I would point to what we've all experienced with the coronavirus pandemic, that we've made remarkable adaptations. We've shown ourselves, we've proven to ourselves all across the world the ways that we can pivot, that we can adapt and make immediate changes to protect ourselves and our loved ones and our community. And that's what we need to do in the face of climate change as well, with a more long-term eye on the horizon. How can we evolve? How can we adapt? How can we make changes that really make a difference, recognizing that we do each have a role to play in protecting one another and making our communities more livable into the future. And so, I think working through and understanding that we all have some power to make a difference is a really key part of communicating about climate change, because it can seem overwhelming. It can seem like, well, what can I do as one person? But one person can ride a bike. One person can reduce their vehicle miles traveled. They can eat more sustainably, help to make a difference in the lessons they teach their children. And, we have a bike share program now in our community to try to provide a mobility alternative. We're working on making public transit as accessible and affordable as possible for more people. And these are important steps that a municipality can take, but individuals can take them too. And I think it's been wonderful to see people in our community here take leadership roles. We have a really active community of folks who are gardening and taking the lead in promoting local food, recognizing that we all benefit when we can help source our food locally. That's good for our local farmers. It's good for our health. And it's good for helping to build up some insulation against, disruption in supply chains, as we saw early in the days of the pandemic. So there's much that we can do.
And where have you find the greatest resistance to change? I mean, in which of all these areas in which we have to advance towards a more sustainable city, have you faced the greatest resistance from the people to change?
I think there's, probably the biggest resistance is in a fear of the unknown, a fear of what this may cost. And I think that part of really working through addressing those concerns is acknowledging that we will continue to have dialogue with one another as we pursue new policies. We adopted a climate action plan that's full of strategies, but as we look to implement them, we will bring them back for public hearing so that residents of our community can share their concerns or express their viewpoints and help shape the implementation of any new policy. So making sure people realize they have a role to play and that they will be heard as we move forward is important. I think it's also really important to acknowledge that there are costs of inaction. When we don't take action on climate, we end up paying a price anyway. I mean, I'm signing contracts right now to pay for well field repairs. We had a bomb cyclone a few years back in our state, and it was the largest natural disaster, most expensive, largest natural disaster that we've ever faced as a state. It damaged our wells that provide water for our community. Our most fundamental basic need was threatened at that moment, and it is costing us to repair it because the intensity of storms and the changes in our climate are playing a role. So acknowledging that there actually are costs of inaction is part of what we need to all be clear about, whether that's insurance rates that are going up or the repairs that we're making to our infrastructure.
Thank you. I like to finish with a question that has to do with the joy of getting to know new cities. And the question is, if I were a citizen from anywhere in the world, and I will go to Lincoln, Nebraska, what is this place that maybe it is not in the tourism books or the magazine recommendations that you will say, when you come to Lincoln, you have to go to this place or this happening? What can you tell us about this?
Well, there are a lot of places that come to mind, and a lot of them are really well known and appreciated, and a lot of them are in our downtown. But one of the places that I especially appreciate, and one of the places that we are working to improve and make more accessible for everyone, is a place called Wilderness Park. And Wilderness Park is this lovely stretch of urban forest, and it is actually something that helps protect our city from stormwater. It's a place that, if there's flooding, it can capture flood waters. And when it's not protecting us from storms, it offers miles of trails where people can bike or hike or walk their dogs or even ride horses. And it's absolutely gorgeous. You see a lot of wildlife deer and owls and sometimes even eagles. And this is something that's really just a stone's throw from our downtown. So it's really easy to get to, and it's a really nice place for just to get away from it all, even within the city. And so I would probably invite you to come walk with me in Wilderness Park.
Thank you very much. I went to Lincoln, Nebraska in the summer of 1992, and I really liked it. Many very nice places. There is the Cornhuskers Stadium for those of you that like college football, as I like it, and it's a really fun city to visit.
It is. Now, can I ask that question of you, Mayor Trevino? Where would I go in your community in San Pedro? Where would you take me if I came to visit?
Well, I will take you to many different places. I'm thinking on a park also. Something that distinguishes the government, this government, is precisely parks. And we just finished to build a park that is really, really beautiful. It's called El Capitan. And the number of the park was chosen from an open an open initiative, and it was a child who proposed the name El Capitan, and it's very, very beautiful. It has a fountain. It has a very exciting and challenging games for youngsters. It has an area for bicycle. It has some rocks to climb. So it's very beautiful. And I also will bring visitors to different coffee shops. San Pedro has become a city of very, very good coffee and bakeries. And well, I like coffee, so I can make my top 10 list and share it with the visitors. Thank you very much, Mayor Bird. We are learning from Lincoln and learning from you as a leader of your community, as a leader of the municipal government, and we want to promote this in all the cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Trevino. I hope I get to come to that coffee shop with you and see El Capitan someday.
Welcome. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Aquí nos vemos para platicar con otros alcaldes, para aprender de tantas experiencias y políticas que dan resultado en otros lados y de los cuales en San Pedro podemos aprender para implementar, y que también en otros lados se aprenda de las prácticas municipales que nos llevan a ser una mejor ciudad. Muchas gracias.